Welcome to the Real Estate Niche Show, a show that focuses on top real estate professionals who specialize in different niches of real estate. My name is Ben Kogut. Join me as we dive deep into the professional and personal lives of the experts of the real estate industry. Welcome to the Real Estate Niche Show. I'm your host, Ben Kogut. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am super excited to have AdaPia de Areco as our guest today. She is a co-member with me of the Next Level Mastermind. She is an investor, an entrepreneur, and an advisor who embodies vulnerability, resilience, and enlightened leadership. She's a principal and the VP of strategy at Alpha Investing, a real estate private capital network that connects investors to highly vetted commercial real estate opportunities. She is a respected fintech entrepreneur who helped bring real estate crowdfunding into the mainstream. AdaPia is sought for her expertise in entrepreneurship, leadership, innovation, and capital raising. She believes that wealth in the right hands changes the world, and that taking wealth creation into your own hands changes your life. AdaPia is passionate about empowerment, from financial to spiritual. She has published a book, which is called Productive Intuition, Connecting to the Subtle, and create a transformational course, Writing to Self. And her Goalcast video about making the right decision for yourself has been viewed more than 40 million times. AdaPia, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great, Ben. Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you.
Oh, it's my honor. Is there anything else that I missed there that you might want to add?
No, I mean, it's always so hard to compress like so much about a person into a few words. And you and I know each other really well. So you know that like for me, a lot of like external like titles and labels and all this kind of stuff have their purpose, absolutely, but they certainly don't express the totality of who I know that we are, and that part of how I try to show up in the world is myself, truly.
Sure. Well, given that we have 30 minutes to discuss, we'll dial in on a few different things here on your past, if you don't mind, and kind of I'd love to hear more about or for you to share more about your book and some of the Goalcast stuff that you've done. But for now, I'd love to learn more about your background. Basically being a pioneer in the online space of capital raising.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What was it like back then versus, how it is now? What can you share?
Oh, wow. It's so different. I mean, it's and the whole thing is how we even get to a place sometimes. Like, you know how when you drive, you're like, how did I get here? I don't even remember driving here. I feel like that's a lot of life too, which is why, as you know, I'm really like passionate about intuition and getting like people to understand we have it, we use it all the time. And so all that said, I kind of stumbled into it. Like I started my career in banking when I was 18. I had a whole different idea of what I thought I was going to be as a successful business person than what I am today and what it took to get me here. So when I first came into real estate crowdfunding, I came into it having kind of not been in the financial industry for a good 7 years. And I was doing other things. I had discovered I was an entrepreneur. Like, who knew? I had no idea I was an entrepreneur, but there I went during the Great Recession, went off on a whole other tangent into the entertainment and consumer goods industry. And then I was doing crowdfunding campaigns, but Kickstarter, Indiegogo with creators and artists and, raising capital, let's say like that. And so then when I discovered the Jobs Act in 2012, it kind of like the little finance bells of my past self kind of went off and said, hold on. So you're telling me that I can turn fans into shareholders? Well, I thought that was pretty cool. And so I went and I tried to learn a little bit more about it by going to conferences and meetups. Well, one of the first ones that I went to was a real estate crowdfunding conference. And then the big light bulb went off because I had no background in real estate investing, but inside of me, I knew that this was like a really big thing, like how amazing that you could invest in real estate that you could never invest in before. Now, everyone listening that is a real estate professional is like, yeah, it's called syndication. And it existed before crowdfunding. So you guys didn't do anything. But we did, because I joined one of the early platforms as employee number one. So basically a founder, kind of the whole story of taking that and venture capital raising and everything that we did there. But the innovation and how I got into online capital raising was I was applying marketing and branding and the world of social media, and everything that the internet brought to the world was getting applied to investing. That was the innovation. It wasn't capital raising. It was that your website was a business card, like a giant business card, and the SEC cared. So they created Rule 506C. And they also allowed you to use that to your benefit for the first time in history. So that's how I got into it. And how it's different today is that these two worlds that were previously so separate have collided, and sponsors and operators who don't need to crowdfund with a crowdfunding platform have learned by necessity to have a website, to get online, to do the marketing, to do everything that now really has become an expectation in our behavior as real estate professionals.
And so how did you transition from that field to where you're at right now? And maybe give our audience a little background on what you're doing now.
Sure. So I feel like the transition, it's like, it's kind of like sideways, like parallel, because at Alpha Investing, we syndicate commercial real estate projects. So we multifamily, senior housing, single family rental portfolios. So we don't crowdfund in the sense that we don't call ourselves crowdfunding because of a few things. We have lower minimums, but not the $1,000 minimums. We're not raising from retail. So we're not using a Reg A plus, like we're not using the true retail, like anyone can invest. We're still like we have a standard that's accredited at a minimum, and we're looking for slightly higher check sizes. So it was kind of a sideways move. Everything that I learned and applied in scaling a company using marketing and online capital raising, we got brought over to Alpha Investing, but only certain specific pieces got implemented, like the brand, right? Like the reputation, like communications, like really managing that piece of it, and being very selective so that, for example, our conversion rates are very high double digits, because we're not trying to get thousands and tens of thousands of people onto a list and pushing them down a funnel. We do it a different way, where by the time somebody speaks to us, they have a good sense of who we are. They have to have a phone call with us. And so that conversion rate is like, 70%, as opposed to like what's considered like good in online marketing is like 3.
Wow, 70%. And so now that begs the question, how do you track that? How do you know that that's the ratio? I mean, that seems pretty difficult to pinpoint.
Well, we know how many people request access. And then from that, how many people convert to be registered, and then from that, how many people have invested.
Got it. So the people that are on your list make a request to be registered, and then from there they get access to it, and then 70% of those people that got access actually pull the trigger and actually make an investment.
Yeah, so from the time that they request access, and they have to get on the phone with us, which is something that's more private equity than it is crowdfunding, because one of the things that I kind of, maybe I take issue with, I don't know, it's not my preference, is to not talk to an investor ever. Is like,
Sure.
And some crowdfunding companies that have the millions upon millions and millions of dollars to spend on marketing and ops, that's the model, and that's fine for them. They just push people down a funnel and it's all automated, never want to talk to you. We're the like you, like I want to meet you, I want to talk to you, I want to have a relationship with you. So it's different, and that's why the conversion is so much higher. So we only need like, a far fewer number of people, and they're more consistent investors as well.
Would you agree it's all about relationships?
I think it's super important, even though there's some people never want to talk to you. They're just like, I love your deals, I just want to invest. But that's a rare those are very few and far between.
And usually that's because there's a meaningful relationship that goes deeper behind that they're like, okay, yeah, that looks good, I trust you, I'm in, that kind of thing. You get all sorts of people on the spectrum, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally.
Nice. Can you share a little bit more about what Alpha is up to and what you guys are focused on?
Yeah, so we, all of everything that I basically said that it's interesting. I always feel like, man, like, it's not that we don't want people to join, we do, but we are closed as a network now, because we're very selective about who we want as investors, because fundamentally we are working with, best in class sponsors, and we are coming in as the sole or the primary LP, and we need to be able to show up with, the $7 to $10 million checks that we're writing these days, for the equity. And so we need to make sure that our investors are serious about investing, and they also show up too. So, so essentially we have this private capital network of investors, and they're all like-minded. They are all really serious about investing in real estate, and it's passive to them. It's in the categories of multifamily, senior housing, and now single family rental portfolio. So we've added that as a category. So our investors come to us because we are really great at underwriting. As you know, so important. We have a fabulous head of underwriting, Ann Lynn, and we place the greatest focus on sponsor selection and then the underwriting. And so people know that about us. And when they want to add those categories, those asset classes to their portfolio for passive income and then capital gains, that's what they're looking for from us. And that's what they've come to expect.
So it sounds like potentially use your intuition when selecting the sponsors that you, in addition to other data points. But what I'm trying to do here is transition us into more of a conversation about some of the bodies of work that you've done around intuition. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I always say, like, we're not using our gut to underwrite, right? Like, that's like the complete opposite. However, there's intangibles when kind of vetting a sponsor that we do touch upon, right? Like, and even the most analytical people will want, like, as we build a relationship with sponsors, like, something's off about that person, or like some information that they present, like, there is a part of us, like, there is an intuition in us that'll say, hey, something's off, let's look into that a little bit further. Or that person just gave me a really bad feeling, they seem dishonest, so let's look into that a little bit further. So, like, when it comes to a technicality from an investment perspective, I think it's really important to understand that our intuition is there to give us signals that maybe our rational analytical mind might write off, right? Because you can make the numbers say anything, especially if you want them to, right? You're like, I really need this deal to work. And you're writing off the fact that you have a bad feeling in your stomach when you speak to this person. Like, something's wrong, and you have to listen to that. So that's, like, to me, when it comes to specifically when we're investing, I think that's really important. I mean, there's so many mechanisms in our brain. Like, we have 188 biases. Like, our brain isn't this perfect machine. It's actually quite flawed. So we just have to know that there's, like, that combination. And so, yeah, when I wrote my book, I really wrote it because a few years ago, when I left the kind of crowdfunding industry, I burnt out. Like, I really hit the wall. I really burnt out. And that led to a seeking that was also part of really a spiritual awakening for me, where I realized, like, I have been living according to all these rules that I don't even think those are right for me. And it really led me to a lot of seeking about who I am. And that's when I started to discover that I had been not listening to my intuition and just kind of writing it off as not important, when in reality it's a really important thing. So the book was the book that I needed to read when I went through it, because I didn't think I could talk to anyone in the business world. I was like, man, if I tell people what's going on with me, they're going to think I've gone nuts, and it's not appropriate. And so that was the book I needed to help me go through what I was going through. And so I also wrote it for people like me or like you who are in business, who are not just about the numbers, but about relationships, but about knowing ourselves, about like stepping into our highest potential, and everything that I learned about who I truly am and how to be connected to that deep, deep inner part of me every day.
Nice. So my follow-up question to that, I'm trying to figure out how to word, but would be, what is it, the message, what is the main message that you want people to take away after having read your book?
Yeah, I hope that they really take away that they are a lot more than they thought they were, with the keyword being thought, right? I'm not who I think I am. I'm so much more. And I'm all those parts of me that I have thought I wasn't allowed to embrace or accept.
Is that another word for that is limiting beliefs, perhaps?
It's like it's like limiting beliefs, but it's bigger than that. It's like, oh, I can't show my softer side, or whatever soft even means these days. Like I can't show my faith. I can't talk about trusting in a higher power, right? Like I can't show that part of me, like the creative, the gifted, because my role or people around me expect me to be this box over here when I'm really like a disco ball, and that's like that's really it, right? We have all these different parts and pieces, and so many times we just are like only allowed, we think we are limiting belief, allowed to show one very small aspect, and the invitation is to show so much more of yourself. And in my experience, the more I show of myself holistically and not just putting on a mask of like, I'm just this person, like this professional, let's say, that's the key to building really authentic relationships.
Wonderful. Well, before we transition into the next line of questioning, would you mind sharing how somebody might get their hands on your book?
Oh, yes. Thank you. So it's on Amazon and all kind of major bookstores. So Productive Intuition, and you can also go to productiveintuition.com to buy it directly.
Productiveintuition.com. You guys hear that? Great. Moving on, we're going to shift into some other types of questioning, which is more along the lines of, well, here's the question. So what was the first or the worst job that you've ever done?
Yeah. My first like official job that wasn't babysitting, right? Because so many of us, and here I'm gonna age myself, but that's fine, was babysitting. But my first like job was when I was 14. I worked in a bakery. And it wasn't the worst. It was my first kind of official job. But what was the worst about it was making donuts at 4 a.m. in the morning on Saturdays. So the process of making donuts alone should make you never want to eat them once you know what they're made out of. I mean, I just like these vats of like melted fat and the sugar and everything. But there's also something kind of cool about working in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, and the smell of that bakery, and because it was famous for apple fritters in this very small town that I lived in. And so that was my first like official job.
Nice. And that was also the worst job, or is there another job that was even worse?
No, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what my worst job is, but I really can't really think of what like a worst job is, because there was always to me like something that came out of it that was really good. And I'm really not one to focus on it'll take me a really long time to think through that, because I just tend to like, if something was like the worst or bad, like it's gone, it's out of me. I don't go back to it.
Nice. Okay. Fair enough. Here's the next question. How do you invest in yourself?
Oh my gosh, such a good question. I'm like your person that really doesn't like to spend money, because I always think what that money could be doing in an investment. So I'm like not really one to spend. But I've learned a lot actually through my husband, Andrew, about abundance, and that's like a whole other like embracing abundance, because it doesn't mean just investing. So I guess the way that I do invest in myself is I invest in experiences and things that I love that make me feel good. So I love food. Andrew loves food. So like we've invested in like pizza and bread making classes and like all the stuff at home to make it. And we love to just, make pizza and bread and have wine and do that. So I invest in things that bring me a sense of also satisfaction that's outside of the mental realm, right? Like food or gardening or just like hiking, like those to me are all things that give me something in my physical form that I really need, because I actually really need to ground and like anchor into the physical. And then like, girly things like facials.
Well, let me further up this question. Do you have a morning routine or any kind of like daily thing that happens for you?
Yeah, I do. So I have a meditation practice, and while I go through seasons where I'm not like always so consistent with it, but whether it's meditation or reflection or contemplation, like I need space and I need to just, whether it's be with my thoughts or write those out or, light a candle, just something to create a sense of stillness so that I'm actually listening to my inner voice instead of the cacophony in my head, which is like all the different voices constantly going off. So that's a really big thing that I do from a time perspective, is I give myself that time. And if I'm feeling spun out mentally, I take breaks. I
Sure.
definitely do that. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Very good. Next question. How do you like to invest in the community or the world?
So I like to give of myself as much as possible. Like, I mean, in addition to making donations and, like financially, I really like to give back in who I am. So I participate in a lot of networking groups of different kinds. I lead a monthly roundtable called Enlightened Leadership for a group called Leadership Global. I'm putting together a mastermind for women around getting them to invest, because I'm like on a mission for really showing women like they need to invest, like they need to make their money work for them, in just through the journey that I've been on around that. And so I like to give back in sharing what I've learned, and offering that, we can call it wisdom if that's not like hubris, but what I've learned to help others with what they are wanting to learn.
I love that. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about the mastermind that you're talking about, and maybe if anybody wanted to participate, how could they go about doing that?
Yeah, so it'll be launching in January, and it's called Wow, Women of Wealth. And I'm co-leading it with a dear friend, and she owns her own insurance brokerage because she decided that she was going to do that on her own. It's like, super badass. So we're coming together to lead women who really want to take wealth creation into their own hands. And it's like, it's tactical. It's not like I just want to talk about money. We're actually going to vet investments. We're going to talk about insurance. We're going to like front to bottom, right? We're going to start with like looking at expenses, like all the way through. And like, there's something so empowering, as you know, about like, well, once you get to the point of having passive income, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Right. Cause we're in this, like, especially as women, for women listening, and like, we are like, I have to work for my money. Well, I believe money should work for me. And so,
Amen.
and like, man, like when you get that, like when it lands in you and then it's in you, you start to put it into practice, a whole new world opens up. And the way that I feel, and once I started to really like dial in my finances and my financial plan, of course, using real estate, like primarily, the way I feel now about everything, about my life, about my future, even in the face of all this inflation, everything that's going on, I want every woman to feel this good, this quote unquote safe, because we're seeking safety, but it doesn't exist. You have to be proactive about getting ahead of things, and especially with money. So I think any woman who's like, hey, wow, like high earner, or I have wealth, but I don't really know what to do with it. It sits there. You know, it's crazy how much money sits on the sidelines because I don't know, or I'm not good at math. Like, it's not about math, right? Like, so any woman that's like, I want to go on like this literal transformational journey, using wealth as the foundation. And it's like from abundance mindset, but all the way down to like that bank account, like coming in every month. Like, if anyone's interested in that, they can reach out to me.
Nice. Well, let's just talk about that a little bit further. Like, what do you think would be the number one thing that somebody should do if they're looking, you know, I don't know what the first step is within the mastermind, but like if someone's in it, what do you think is the first thing someone should do to start going down that journey?
Well, aside from it being like a really definite decision, like I'm going to do this, and it's a form of self-care, right? Like wealth is a form of self-care. That's like the number one thing. I'm doing this, and I'm not going to shy away from the ugly stuff that I'm going to have to look at, like my credit card statement, like all the ways I'm spending money that it's because not most of us, a lot of people, especially people who are privileged enough to earn a lot, have way more money than they think when they actually look at how they're spending it, like a lot more, right? And so that's the number one thing, is it's kind of getting over this like hump of looking at it. And actually, even before then, there's this really great report by Merrill that came out recently. And this statistic is crazy, but 61% of women would rather talk about their own death than talk about money. So maybe the first thing is actually wanting to talk about it. Wow. Yeah, no, it's a big no-no. Like women do not, now I do with some women, but before, like, women don't get together and are like, hey, how's your fund doing? Like, how's your money? Like, no, women don't talk about that. Men do. And it's gotta be part of the dialogue. So it really begins with like a decision to say, I'm gonna do this.
Well, I feel and I love your passion for what you're doing, and if there's anything I can do to support you and the women that you surround yourself with, I'm happy to help share as well. Which leads me to my next question, which is, how does AdaPia define success?
Oh man, I think success, that's such a hard one for me because it's so subjective. And I think I really feel successful because for me, it's a feeling. Like success is a feeling, like despite I just talked all this money and passive income and wealth and all this kind of stuff, but success is how I feel. And that's 100% a choice that I get to make moment by moment. So I'm successful when I'm present, when I'm not letting that limiting belief creep in, when I'm not letting like the news get the better of my emotions. Like success to me is like really feeling like I'm doing the best that I can do, and I honor myself for where I'm at, like moment to moment. That's when I feel the most successful, when I'm like, I'm good, I'm being good to myself. And when I'm good to myself, what I have to give to others is like, it's limitless.
I love that. And I get moments of that feeling of being present through the practice of meditation. And I love how you tied all that together. And so I'm going to float this question to you. How did AdaPia define success when she, let's say, first got into the real estate business?
Oh, well, it was money.
Money.
No, when I started working in bank when I was 18, I knew that financial independence was important because I didn't want anyone to tell me what to do. That was really what I figured that out really early. But I had it tied to a lifestyle, to a title, to money, which is why when I hit that burnout and that spiritual awakening, it was kind of like, man, like, how have I not seen that all of the distress, anytime I've been in distress internally, is because that wasn't really my value and my goal. My value and my goal was always tied to independence and empowerment, but I got caught up, which is what we all do. It's kind of the journey, right? We were like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. You're going to be happy. You're going to feel successful. And I never did. I actually always felt like I had never done enough. And now I don't have that feeling of I'm not doing enough for the most part, right? I have moments, but I feel like I'm good. Like I'm good. And then I feel abundant. And it's it's the opposite. I went from scarcity that was seeking a lot to abundance that is grateful for what I currently have.
Very nice. Well, as a as a friend, I've seen you grow, and I've seen how much positive influence that you have on the people around you and in the world. And I'm inspired, and I love how you are inspiring other people. And I think that there is literally no limits to what you can accomplish at AdaPia. And I hope that some people out there will watch this video and join your mastermind, and follow all the wonderful things that you're doing in our industry and across the community, and with intuition and all the other wonderful things that you're doing. So I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for being a positive influence in my life. And yeah, so as we're kind of winding things down, so I just wanted to say that to you.
Thank
here.
you. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. No, I mean it. Is there anything else that you might want to talk about or share before we kind of get into like how can people reach out to you and stuff like that?
No, I mean, I just really hope that people are gonna, like, even just for a minute, think about like, do I listen to my intuition enough? Like, if you could take like one kind of thing away, just like, it's there. Have I been telling myself I'm not supposed to use it? And I would really invite everybody to say like, no, I'm gonna own my intuition.
I love that. I will be asking myself that often. And on that note, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. As you know, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And so come find me on LinkedIn. You can just AdaPia. I'm pretty easy to find. And if people want to learn more about me, they can go to my website, adapiaderico.com. But get in touch and let me know, where you're writing in from and how you found me, so that I have a good sense of you. And yeah, hopefully people will reach out.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I'm gonna wind it down. 30 minutes flew by, and thank you again for joining as a guest on the Real Estate Niche Show. And on that note, that's all I got for now.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Real Estate Niche Show. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or the show, you can follow me on Instagram at Ben Kogut and at The Real Estate Niche Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.